बेंगलुरु का आसमान आज इस बात की गवाही दे रहा है कि नई ऊंचाई, नए भारत की सच्चाई है।
The Chang now is diving sharply.
The deafening roar of the engines of the mighty Sukhoi taking you for a rock and roll. Here he goes, spinning right in front of the nave. और ये वो टीम लीडिंग अफिलिएट हमारे मुखिया बीबी को।
The 14th edition of Asia's largest aero show, Aero India 2023. Today it was inaugurated by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and this happened at the Indian Air Force Air Base in Bengaluru. The exhibition, of course, showcasing, like you are seeing on your screens, there was a lot of indigenous equipment on display, also technologies, and yes, they're trying to forge these partnerships with foreign companies, all in line with Make in India, Make for the World, the vision that the government is pushing. And of course, the Aero Show is known for the spectacular exhibits in the air. We did get to see all of that on display this morning itself. The showstopper, one would have to say, has been the US F-35 stealth fighters. Those took to the skies, and yes, everyone was in awe. In fact, the Prime Minister has gone on to say this, that the government is looking at increasing India's defense exports prowess from where it currently stands, which is at $1.5 billion. India should be pushing it up to $5 billion by the year 2024-25. This is what the Prime Minister has said.
आप भी जानते हैं कि डिफेंस एक ऐसा क्षेत्र है जिसकी टेक्नोलॉजी को, जिसकी मार्केट को और जिसके बिजनेस को सबसे कॉम्प्लिकेटेड माना जाता है। इसके बावजूद भारत ने बीते 8-9 साल के भीतर अपने यहां डिफेंस सेक्टर का कायाकल्प कर दिया है। इसलिए हम इसे अभी केवल एक शुरुआत मानते हैं। हमारा लक्ष्य है कि 2024-25 तक हम एक्सपोर्ट के इस आंकड़े को $1.5 बिलियन से बढ़ाकर $5 बिलियन तक ले जाएंगे।
So that's what we heard from the Prime Minister in that speech that he made at the inauguration of the Aero Show in Yelahanka in Bengaluru. And yes, Times Network has been covering the event extensively. My colleague Shivani Sharma and Deepak Bopanna, both of them from the Times Network, have been getting us what's going on at the Aero Show through the day. And we took a closer look at the F-35, those jets, over in Bangalore as well. But here's a sense of what we picked up from the reports that they sent in.
Aero India has begun in Bengaluru's Yelahanka, and this is indeed a runway to the billion of opportunities, because you see a number of companies from around 98 nations are already showcasing their products, their weapons. And here what you see is the stall from Russia and the S-400 missile systems that are being on a display here. And we already know that S-400 missile systems have already been inducted by the Indian forces. They are already deployed, and there are a lot many systems which are under consideration for making in India with the technological transfer from Russian companies. So this is the Almaz Anti-Corp of Russia, where you see a number of defense systems. There are naval air defense missile systems, S-350E, Vityaz SAM system. So these are the platforms that are on the display, which the Russian companies intend to manufacture in India under the Make in India scheme, with collaboration with Indian companies out here. We already know that the Rosoberon expert from Russia is manufacturing AK-203 rifles in Amethi, Uttar Pradesh, in India. And here what you see is the KA-226 light multipurpose helicopter, which is also under consideration for being manufactured in India under the Make in India theme, Make in India scheme of the Indian government. And there are a number of other air defense gun and missile systems that are on a display. This is the Pantsir S-1 air defense gun, the missile system that is on display out here, the Tor M2KM. All these weapons we see here on the display in Aero India are the weapons that are of importance in the present scenario, the geopolitical scenario. We see the Russian-Ukrainian war, we see what is happening in North Korea and the different parts of the world as they are turning into the war zones. India is also preparing, and it is collaborating with the companies from Russia, Israel and many other companies. As we say, there are 98 different nations that are in Aero India. They want to make with India, make in India. That will not only improve the capabilities of Indian market, but it will also improve the power of our defense forces and the economy. This is Shivani Sharma with Vijay R.K. Yadav from Aero India, Bengaluru.
Making its debut at Aero India 2023 is the US Air Force's FA-35A. And here you take a look at this majestic beauty that's of course parked here. Now this particular aircraft of course is the 5th generation of fighters, and the F-35A Lightning II and the F-35A Joint Striker fighters of course are making their debut at this year's Aero India 2023. They've come in from the Hill Air Force Base in Utah. And we are also expecting them, of course, to do a couple of sorties over the next 5 days. And joining them also on display is the F-16 Fighting Falcon duo. And what makes it so important is that this particular aircraft that you're looking at behind me is considered as one of the best in the world. And, having its presence here in Aero India is definitely going to draw a lot of eyeballs.
All right, so those are the reports from Ground Zero. That's where the action is, at Yelahanka in Bangalore. And of course, much more is going to follow. But what's the outlook? Well, we had a word come in from Alex Chalk, who's the British Minister of State at the Ministry of Defence, and he's been attending the Aero Show in Bangalore. And when we spoke to him, he says that India is already a great country, but this is only the beginning for India. He says that the United Kingdom would like to assist India's attempt to export arms and weapons because he says a strong India is good for the world. This is what we got from him.
Rishi Sunak was very keen that I should come here to develop this relationship. But let me tell you, we see in the policies that are being pronounced here, effectively make in India a great opportunity for India, but also for the United Kingdom. And so we have some great companies out here, BAE Systems, Thales, MBDA and Rolls-Royce. But when we talk about what we want to deliver, it's not saying simply buy our technology. No, what we want to do is to co-produce sovereign indigenous capability for India, so that when it comes to those capabilities, India can develop them, can export them to who they want, when they want, how they want. This is about building Make in India capability, and we want to be absolutely at your side.
You just mentioned a number of companies, and you also mentioned about Rolls-Royce. Yeah. So something big is going to happen out here. Tell us more.
Well, so Rolls-Royce are here with a very clear pitch. Not only can Rolls-Royce produce something which is technologically the best solution, I think most people accept that. Not only can it be done at an affordable, cost-effective price, but also we are about transferring that technology, no strings attached. What it means is that that jet engine, which India would co-produce, would be indigenous Indian capability. So India would join as the 6th nation on the planet with that sovereign indigenous capability, which means that if they want to export it in the region, they don't need to come back to Rolls-Royce to ask a question. They don't need to come back to the British government to ask for permission. They do this themselves. So that is very, very important.
Well, that's what we got from the British, and they are participating at the Aero Show in a big way. But meanwhile, this is the first time that our very own Hindustan Aeronautics has unveiled the design of the scale model of the HLF-T-42. Now, this aircraft has this unique tail art of the Hindu god Maruti, and of course, it symbolizes strength and speed and agility. It comes with a tagline, "The storm is coming." So my colleague Shivani had a word with Group Captain Harshvardhan Thakur to understand what this next-gen supersonic trainer can actually do. This is what the conversation transpired.
A lead-in fighter training requirement has been there for quite some time. The new generation aircraft of tomorrow, like the AMCA, LCA Mark II, TED-BF, etc., are all single-seater aircraft, single-crew aircraft. They have a pilot who needs to be trained elsewhere for being capable of flying them and in combat especially.
Thank you so much.
There is a culture of, there is a possibility of training them on simulators only and then launching them into these aircraft. That kind of training would be very inadequate, inefficient, and it will be very costly because all his training he will be doing alone on a fighter aircraft, which is a very expensive aircraft. As a result of that, these high-performance single-seater aircraft require a trainer. That trainer is HLFT-42, which is a very high-performance trainer, perhaps the highest performance in the world, so that it can keep pace with those aircraft and give that environment which fighters actually are exposed to.
So we see a lot of missile systems out here, and we also see an image on the tail. Sir, and everybody wants to ask that why this image on this particular aircraft. So we'll walk that side so that we keep on showing the image also.
So the number one is that we have a number of missiles on this, and that's because this has to be combat ready at all times, has to be available for actual operations at all times. Any trainer which is sitting on the ground is useless when the operations are on, so it will be employed in water. As for our inspiration of the graphic on the tail, that's simply because of HL's legacy, and our inspiration was strength and courage.
All right, so this is about Hindustan Aeronautics and this trainer combat aircraft that they are trying to put out at the Aero show. But of course, the idea is to make in India. That's what the centre is pushing for, and not just make in India, make for the world is the credo. How much further of that agenda can get pushed, and how much of that are we witnessing over at the Aero show? Let's discuss this from a private sector perspective as well. Maruf Raza, of course, is consultant and strategic affairs expert who's joining us on the show, along with Mr. S.K. Jha, who's the chairman and managing director at Midhani, the Mishra Dhatu Nigam Limited, and Arun Ramchandani is also with us. He's executive vice president and head at Larsen & Toubro Defence IC. Great to have you, gentlemen. Mr. Ramachandran, to you first. The Prime Minister, we heard him stress on India's journey as a defence importer. And this about moving ahead from being a defence importer to an exporter. He says the government is targeting an increase in defence exports. Today it's $1.5 billion, and they're hoping it'll be $5 billion by 2024-25. That's what he said. From that kind of outlook, that kind of target, where are we, as you see it, on that journey, especially when it comes to the participation of the private sector as a real co-passenger in that journey with the government?
So I think there has been a great amount of opening up in the Indian defense sector, and we have been able to make inroads in the international market as well. Today, we are not only exporting products and components, but it's been scaled up to complete solutions and platforms. Of course, there was the breakthrough of the export of the BrahMos missile system to Philippines, and quite like that, there have been breakthroughs in the export of artillery gun systems, other artillery systems. And I see the trend to be very positive. I think the target of 5 billion by 2025 looks real now. It does call for a high rate of growth in terms of our exports, but the momentum is there. We've seen exports grow multifold in the last few years. And if we maintain that momentum, 5 billion in 2025 looks very doable.
What role will the private sector be able to play right now? Because, Maruf, if you consider India's defense imports, Russia has supplied around $13 billion of arms. This has happened over the past 5 years. The European Union, the United States, they would be now lobbying for a bigger share of that market, especially now with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There may be, of course, disruption in defense supply from Russia and added pressure from the West that may likely build on New Delhi to limit their ties with Moscow. So how has India been able to tackle this so far with its own defense manufacturing, its diversification of their aging Russian defense equipment? Is that push going to come from within India, or do you think that the West is going to push for more to come into India by way of imports, which India is trying to change?
Actually, the answers lie in your question itself, because there is a lot happening in a variety of areas. One, to start with, I'm very happy to see that the same countries and the same exporters who are looking at India as clearly an export market and India was amongst the world's largest buyers of military equipment, which it's still there. It's a dubious distinction we are trying to do away with. The fact of the matter is there is a lot happening, and I've spoken to a couple of people who are very senior in the defense industry and the private industry, and they feel all this push has started to come in the last 7-8 years, largely under Mr. Modi's government. Not that we were not making things earlier. We were making a lot of stuff, but you know, the area of defense manufacturing is a very, very demanding space. I read years ago once that the countries that make fighter aircraft have the highest technological skills. Remember, Japan is very high on technology, but Japan still doesn't make a fighter aircraft of its own. So it's a very demanding area, and there are only 3-4 manufacturers. You had the British minister talking about, you know, India can make what it wants, export what it wants. It's a completely different change of tone, which is now doing the rounds here. The second thing is that there are a lot of opportunities that are going to be coming the way of these defense exporters, because they can use India as a building block and a ground to manufacture and cut down their overheads and sell it to other third world countries. Because whether you go to war or not, there is always the demand for having top-end military technology. The third thing is that India is even now looking at buying, despite its own manufacturing desire to enhance manufacturing at home. Take the case of fighter aircrafts. You know, the list is still pending of 114 odd fighter aircrafts, of which even if we buy 18 odd from outside, which I'm told is what we are looking at, we are going to end up manufacturing close to 90 fighter aircrafts in India. And this is huge. Just to give you an idea, 36 fighters bought from Rafale were worth 59,500 crores.
Yes.
So if you're looking at twice that amount, you're looking at twice that amount of money going either way into our industry or to somebody who's going to supply us that.
Correct.
There is a big naval demand for fighters for our indigenous aircraft carrier. This could lead to about 30 more fighters, helicopters, and various other things before the aircraft carrier becomes fully operational.
True.
The third thing is there is a big demand for 800 helicopters of all types, which the three services want. You know, for too long, we were not taking decisions. And I have often pointed fingers at Mr. Antony's time as Raksha Mantri, who the military used to jokingly call him Saint Antony because he wanted to do no wrong.
Correct.
But the problem was that defense deals are tricky areas.
Yeah.
You have to take tough decisions and get on with it, because the Air Force is today hankering for these systems which have been denied.
Yes,
to
and
them
these
for
are
years.
required.
Finally,
But to expand the scope of the companies that are involved in defense manufacturing, now that remains a key. Dr. Jha, do come in on this. In the past, like Maruf was also hinting, for one, HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics, they've sold their Dhruv helicopters to the Philippines, to Mauritius, to Ecuador. And yes, the Russia-India venture created the BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles that Philippines has picked up. Also, Hindustan Aeronautics Tejas light fighter jets, they are up for sale to Malaysia. But really, when it comes to other defense items like offshore patrol vessels or coastal surveillance systems or avionics or even rocket launchers and spares for radars, how is India really poised? Because now India wants smaller domestic companies, wants startups to make parts for large defense products and attract foreign investment for joint product development and production. From India's private sector in the defense manufacturing industry, sir, which companies do you see making the strongest strides, as it were, on that front in the near future? Would your company be one of them?
Yeah, in fact, many companies are coming forward and in different areas. If you see in the area of aircraft industry, today, of course, HAL is the leading company in the country. But at the same time, you'll find that many, you can see recently, there is a collaboration with Airbus, Tata and Airbus. Also, we have a collaboration of Boeing and Tata. So many private company along with the foreign OEMs are coming in the country for manufacturing. I think these are the equipment systems going to give lot of impetus in the manufacturing in the country, in the aircraft industry also. Coming to the land system, recently you might have seen that many equipments have been developed by L&T. Many equipments have been made by Bharat Force. So private companies are coming forward and doing in the land system also. Similarly, for the aircraft industry also, for making the system subsystems also, many companies are coming in the India for manufacturing. So overall, if you see, there is a all around development in the entire ecosystem. And as there is an impetus by the government to increase the capital expenditure, or they say that 68% of the procurement within the country, I think that mandate has really given a big push in the manufacturing industry. So therefore, the private companies, they see the business and the investments are coming in the big way.
Yes.
And 74% you have the limit of the FDI. That also giving a lot of advantage for the investment in the defense industry.
Yes, and like
So
Dr.
overall,
Yes, just want to take
yeah.
that point across to Mr. Ramchandani as well, the point that Dr. Jha was making. Mr. Ramchandani, India's airlines, they're growing rapidly. The Tata Group's Air India is expected to announce a potentially record deal to buy nearly 500 jets from Airbus and Boeing, and that could be worth more than $100 billion at list prices. But of course, India is very keen that Boeing and Airbus set up final assembly lines in the country, considering the number of orders that these companies are going to get from Indian airline companies. Is that going to fly, so to speak? I mean, does India have what it takes to become an assembly hub for civil aviation ecosystem?
So, a lot of Indian companies are supplying into the aviation ecosystem even today. Getting down to the final assembly lines, I think we are well equipped to do that. I mean, the Tata Airbus deal is well known for the transport aircrafts, and they would be setting up final assembly lines, and I can see this proliferating. I also see a lot of opportunities for the MRO, or the maintenance and repair activities, which would scale up in India with the number of aircrafts coming in. The kind of opportunities both in defense and civil MRO. And I think it augurs well for the aviation industry in India. To my mind, we are well geared up. We understand the standards. We understand the requirements. Our companies have been working with international companies, and we are amongst the top of the supply chain for them. So I guess we are all set. Typically, in the past, all the assembly work happened at Hindustan Aeronautics. So the kind of ecosystem exists within the country. And I'm sure that this presents a great opportunity, and our country will take this.
So bringing the action home now, Maruf, the Indian Air Force is soon going to scout for 114 multi-role combat aircraft, the MRFAs, like we call them. Can the thundering American F-35 fighter jets that have been stealing all the attention of the Aero show in Yelahanka and Bangalore fit the profile that India is looking for, or is India going to look closer home to fill that gap?
There's always pressure on the Air Force to give support to the local defense industry. And so the Air Force, from some years ago, said that the LCA was not up to mark, changed its tune, and started saying the LCA is a damn good aircraft. So that was signs of what was to come. But the Air Force is not going to be pushed into only buying the LCA, which really can't meet up to the abilities of 4.5 or 5 generation kind of aircraft, whether it's the Rafale or the F-35. We also upgraded a lot of our Sukhois, which are about 270 odd Sukhois that we have, and they are the mainstay of the Air Force. And please understand that all these gizmos that are added to the very, very expensive aircraft like the F-35, what in military terms we call our force multipliers. So, you don't really end up often using them. We go back to the scenario of 1965 war, where a lot of new tanks were not used for fear that they'd get destroyed in battle. So the F-35 is so expensive that my guess is, give or take a little, one F-35 will be the cost of at least one squadron or more. So we need to make up our depleted squadron strengths, because there is some hard air power activity that the Air Force has to carry out, force multipliers or not.
Yes.
You have to do aerial reconnaissance, you have to cover your borders, you have to do uplifting of troops, you have to do, just training sorties.
In fact, talking about training, Maruf, ATL has unveiled, we were just taking a closer look at the design for the new supersonic trainer, the new HLFT-42. How well do you think it can help the IAF in modern combat training?
That's very impressive, because you see, we keep reading about these MiG-21s crashing. Please understand that it's not the fault of the pilot. The technology is so old. Some of it is 1960s technology, as you saw in the case of Wing Commander Abhinandan Veer Chakra now, for what happened when he took on the F-16s. They're very old. Can you imagine taking a long journey from one of our major cities, 300, 400, 500 kilometers away in a car that was made in the 1960s? And you have fighter aircraft, which are very demanding. The bodies become brittle. The energy levels in the aircraft are minimal. You need to use high-level aerodynamic weapons platforms. All that cannot be used. So you need to, phase those out. And I believe MiG-21s are being phased out, but the next step would be probably MiG-27s. But the fact of the matter is that the current budget has only given room for about 15% of the defense budget to be devoted to buying stuff, and that's capital expenditure. But India's wish list for the armed forces is so big. We're not just looking at aircraft, we're not looking at helicopters, we're looking at air defense systems, we're looking at anti-hypersonic missile systems. We are also looking at systems that is going to make our cities feel safe in the event of a conflict. Remember, we are facing two very, very angry adversaries.
Right.
So we've got to invest there.
Yes, exactly.
And let's see how the money is going to come.
Well, defense expenditure is always under the scanner, especially in difficult times when the resources are that limited, and perhaps it makes more economic sense to make in India that much more and to have those kind of partnerships that help manufacture in India. But Dr. Jha, you're one of them. There are representatives of 98 countries and over 700 defense companies at the Aero show this time. Compared to what they have and they are putting out to the world and to India, what are India's biggest offerings to the global defense market? Where do you see the potential to rise and seize further opportunities for India if we have to expand our export potential?
Yeah, in fact, if you see this year, DEF Expo means Aero India compared to the last year. Means last year means in the 2020. In fact, we had a very a huge influx of our domestic exhibitors were highest. Almost we have 701 numbers of domestic exhibitors have participated. So this shows that since the business is growing, the participation from the domestic industry is also growing. Now, definitely, if there is a business within the country, it will also have the advantage of in the export market also. And I see, in fact, today when we had a lot of interaction with the CEOs coming from the global companies, they have many CEOs have shown the interest in doing the collaboration with the Indian industry, and many announcements were made. And all announcements were mainly for making the product in India. Earlier, announcements used to be made just for the sake of announcement. But now, if you see that many announcements are coming and it is made into the reality. So this gives the indication that the Indian companies and foreign OEMs are joining hands together.
Right.
And many products are coming out from our soil, and I think this is a good sign for our country.
Yes.
And as we have RM Raksha Mantri has rightly told today that not only we are making for India, make for the global.
Yes, exactly.
So I think with this,
so the potential is all there, the base is all there,
yeah.
And right now we are seeing that action. Perhaps we'll have more announcements come through in the Aero show as well from many different companies who are partnering. And that Make in India vision and the ability of India to be able to manufacture for the world as well. Now, that is going to get tested. Whether or not we meet that $5 billion export target that the Prime Minister has spoken about, that remains to be seen, but the potential does exist. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Maruf Raza joining us with Dr. Jha and Mr. Ramchandani. It's a pleasure getting your perspective on India tonight. Meanwhile, we're turning to the markets and seeing what